fields are breathing slow. There's a mother calling softly for the child she came to know. We took her milk, we took her baby, called it custom, called it need. But the earth remembers every bond we break to feed our greed. Bring the cows back to their mothers, bring the milk back to the young. Let no baby be.
It's time for our keynote speaker. I'm so excited. I've had lots of conversations with Anja Heister. If we can bring Anya up, this would be great. So Anya is a PhD biologist, and I think you had an interdisciplinary in studies from the University of Montana as your PhD in a biology MS. And Anya is a wildlife spokesperson. She wrote, I think, probably one of the only textbooks that's used in mainstream education, and it's called Beyond the North American Model of Wildlife Conservation, From Lethal to Compassionate Conservation. She's going to really explain what that means. This so-called conservation is just a free ticket for hunters to hunt, basically. Anya is the founder of Footloose, Montana, a grassroots organization fighting to end trapping and other assaults on wildlife through science-based education and advocacy. Just some beautiful stories to tell, some hard stories to hear, but stories that we need to hear so that we can share the message. Thank you so much, Anya, for being here. You have become a dear friend and such a beloved human being in our community and in our lives. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Tammy. And I really have to say, this has been a day of extraordinary presentations, and I'm in absolute awe of everyone and of the activism. I mean, it's been amazing. So thank you very much. I'm going to, I hope the spirit of technologies are with me. So, hey, do you see the slide?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we do. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you see the first slide, Born into the Wild, the Sacred Bond.
Yes, that's the one we see, Anya.
Okay, great. Yeah, so again, thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you everyone for taking the time to be here today. So in my former life in Germany, I studied biology, and I spent a lot of time protesting various types of animal exploitation, but especially animal experimentation and so-called fur farms and wearing fur. Ironically, and however, nothing could really prepare me for the situation I encountered when I moved to Montana in 1999. And by that, I mean that I was just not prepared for the extent of massive hunting and fishing and trapping that is just so deeply embedded in the culture here in Montana. And has certainly shaped the attitudes toward wild animals in a very utilitarian way. So Montana is a very rural and agricultural state. There are about a little bit over 1 million people here. There are 2.5 million cows, mainly on public lands, cows and calves. There's sheep. 1/3 of Montana is public land. And in a way, Montana is one of the last strongholds for many animal species that no longer exist in other states or at very limited numbers. For example, grizzly bears, who are making a comeback, so to speak. But they are currently still federally protected under the Endangered Species Act, but very aggressive efforts are already underway to delist them from the ESA, and with losing protection, the management falls to the state, and that means they will be hunted. So a few years after I had moved to Montana, something happened that really changed my life. So one winter day, my husband, his son, and I, we were cross-country skiing through a national forest when we came across a trapped pine marten. And you can see the photo of the pine marten here. That animal was caught in a foothold trap with her front paw and suspended in the air. So she was just hanging there between the trees with her front paw caught. There was a big pile of scat underneath, which indicated that that animal had been hanging there for a long time. She was absolutely motionless, did not move. Her head was tilted to the side. We actually thought she was dead. We placed her, we had the right tools with us that day. We managed to cut the chain with which the trap was fastened to the tree branch, and we placed her in the snow on the ground. We covered her up with a jacket, and we managed to get the foothold trap off her foot. So in essence, we liberated her from the trap, which is illegal. And then we pulled the jacket away from her, and that second, she ran away from us. She stood up and she ran away as fast as she could. But then it happened. She stopped and she turned around and she looked at us. And I still get goosebumps when I tell that story. So she looked at us for a brief moment. By then, the three of us were absolutely in tears. And after a moment, she just turned around and limped away and disappeared into the woods. I still think about her, and I'm wondering almost every day whether she survived this traumatic trap incident. And I'm wondering if she was a mother. We don't know. So the event was also very traumatic for us humans. And like I've mentioned, it literally changed my life. After that, in 2007, I co-founded Footloose, Montana. I decided to start a PhD program at the University of Missoula in 2010, finished that in 2016. I wrote my dissertation on trapping. And then, as Tammy kindly mentioned, I wrote my book on the North American wildlife conservation model, which was published in 22, which is in essentially a scientific and ethical critique of the government-run lethal wildlife management system. So when I mention the lethal wildlife management system, that is the North American wildlife conservation model, which basically describes it is historically grown, and it describes the way federal and state governments employees think, right? And it has at its cornerstone hunting, fishing, and trapping. So we launched Footloose Montana in 2007, a nonprofit organization based in Missoula, Montana, with the mission of ending all recreational trapping on public lands. In recent years, and mainly because the situation for wild animals here in Montana, as in the West, as almost everywhere, has become so much worse, we now also address other assaults on wildlife, so other types of cruelty, such as wildlife killing contests, so-called whacking, that is chasing and running over wild animals with vehicles, for example, with snowmobiles. It's all legal. And the movement to privatize and sell off public lands, the homes of wild animals, and the intensifying slaughter of large carnivores, mainly black bears, mountain lions, and wolves. Our thinking at the time when we started Footloose Montana was that we could end trapping over the course of a few years. We were convinced that shortly we would be out of a job, and that's what we wanted. So we were so wrong, right? Because here we are almost 18 years later, and we're still trying to end trapping on public lands. We've conducted our first ballot initiative in 2010. We missed the ballot by a few thousand signatures. The second time we did a ballot initiative in 2010, we made it on the ballot, and we got the support of about 186,000 Montana voters. Unfortunately, this was just 1/3 of the voters, and so our initiative did not become law. In 2023, we commissioned our second poll, which found that 52% of Montanans now support an end of trapping on public lands. And that is an increase of, or by 6% compared to our first poll in 2012. It also showed that the leading concern of people had switched from public safety in 2012 to animal cruelty in 2023. And since we've always focused on the cruelty aspect of trapping, we feel somewhat confirmed that that our work has changed people's mind, and we take credit for that change in the public's perception about trapping. However, and what that slide also shows, or that timeline also shows, is while the public is slightly shifting toward more compassion for wild animals, the opposite has been happening within the hunting and the trapping community, and that includes the State Wildlife Agency, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, where we see an intensifying war against wild animals with expanded kill seasons and kill methods. So this is some of the work we have been doing and continue to do. We provide comments and testimonies in the Montana legislature. We work on introducing bills. So, for example, one bill would require trappers to post signs in areas they trap. We're going to introduce that bill in 2027. This will be the third time we do that. We're involved in 4 lawsuits, 3 to protect wolves, 1 to protect wolverines. And as I've mentioned, we have commissioned 2 polls and conducted 2 ballot initiatives. We collaborate with other wildlife conservation organizations on petitions and letters to Congress persons and other legislators. We offer trap release workshops. We offer them statewide and for free to the public, where we show people how to open and handle traps and snares to free a dog and other companion animals. And that program has been also very successful in educating people about not only about trapping regulations, but about ethical issues involved in trapping. And of course, when I teach those trap release workshops, I always make a point pointing out the need to end trapping because of the cruelty involved. We did protests when wolves lost their protection under the ESA in 2011, and when trapping first started, we did some billboards, we table at events, and since 2021, we've published weekly e-newsletters. In 2012, we created a fund for trap victims to help with medical costs. We call it Buddy's Fund, and that is named after a young dog who was trapped recently and survived that trap incident miraculously. He had to have his leg amputated, and we helped cover the costs. And this incident actually had a very, very happy ending, as Buddy found a loving forever home with an absolutely wonderful couple. We're doing some outreach to the art community to find a metal sculptor who will transform the pile of traps we have. We have lots of them. And turn them into hopefully a beautiful sculpture of a wild animal. We call that traps formation project from cruelty to beauty. Most recently, we ran 4 TV spots that were narrated by the actor Peter Coyote, and they aired statewide. They were very successful as an educational tool to raise awareness about trapping and other types of cruelty committed against wild animals. And lastly, I just wanted to mention that a lesson that we have learned over the years is that our opponents are in places of power, they are organized, they're unified, and they're well funded. And that is no different to the dairy and the meat industry and other industries that exploit animals. Our opponents come out in full force as soon as what we call the benign public, those of us who want to protect wild animals from human-caused harm, wants to make even the most minor changes to the most atrocious hunting and trapping practices. And this is because of a widespread human supremacy worldview, the belief that humans are the most important species and that other animals are just resources and means to an end just to serve humanity. So on this slide, you can see that lethal wildlife management with hunting, fishing, and trapping as its cornerstones, again, the North American model of wildlife conservation, is just one manifestation of human supremacy. And we've talked about this today throughout presentations. It's literally everywhere. So what does that mean for wild animals in Montana? Well, it means that hunters in Montana kill tens of thousands of wild animals every year. Here you can see some of the animals that get shot by hunters. So, for example, during the last 2025-26 kill season, hunters shot 539 mountain lions, 28,188 elk, and 1,600 black bears. Again, these are just the numbers that are being reported of the animals killed. Many of them obviously are mothers, and I'll get to that in a minute. Bobcats and wolves can be shot and trapped, and I just wanted to show you a couple of traps so that you can see really how massive and how brutal these devices are. So I hope you can see this. This is called a conibear trap, developed by a Canadian trapper in the 1950s. That trap is designed to break an animal's neck. It can be a very quick death. It oftentimes is not. And the animal gets stuck on her body, on her head, and suffers a prolonged and very brutal death. Here is a trap used for trapping wolves. I think the length here of those bars are about 10 inches. So that gives you an idea. These are absolutely brutal devices. Trappers also use snares to suffocate animals. It's an absolute tragedy. So there are about 3,000 trappers in Montana who bother to buy a trapping license every year to trap and kill so-called fur-bearing animals in traps and snares. Those are mostly set on public lands. A trapper pays $28 to trap fur bearers, such as beavers, bobcats, pine marten during the official fur-bearer trapping season that begins in September and ends in May of the following year. A trapper pays only $20 and then can kill up to 15 wolves. One trapper can kill up to 15 wolves for $20. So other animals that get trapped are so-called non-game animals, for example, raccoons and badgers, and predators, such as foxes and coyotes. They can be killed all year long and without a license. As you can see, the trappers reported killing over 11,000 coyotes. We don't know how many coyotes are being shot because nobody keeps track. Trappers kill about 1,300 red foxes every season, and they killed 548 badgers in the last trapping season, and so on. In total, trappers killed 32,000 fur bearers. They have killed 32,000 fur bearers in the 2025-2026 kill season. I don't call them hunting season anymore because I think it's just a massacre, so I call them shooting seasons. So again, these are just the reported numbers. And if we add the non-targeted animals, those animals that the trappers are actually not after, the death toll comes closer to probably around 100,000 animals every year that are being killed by trappers. So when we talk about the wild mother-child bond, what immediately comes to my mind is the fate of black bears. And that is because black bears are persecuted for the most part of the year. It doesn't mean that other carnivore large animals are not persecuted for most of the year, because they are, but I just chose to focus on the black bears and wolves in this presentation. So black bears are persecuted for the most part of the year when they are outside their dens. Black bears already face so many challenges in a human-dominated world, including getting killed on behalf of ranchers. So bears die because of our meat-eating behavior, right? In addition, they face a hunting season during which trophy hunters shoot them with guns, rifles, archery, and chase and kill them with dogs. Hunters in Montana kill, like I've mentioned, they kill about 1,600 black bears every year. More than half of them during the spring bear hunting season. And about 1/3 of the total of those black bears are females. During the last kill season, 580 female bears were killed. Many of them were likely lactating, which means they had cubs who likely died as well. The spring bear hunting season is especially hideous because it overlaps with bears coming out of their dens, and trophy hunters kill them at a time when the bears are most vulnerable. A female bear takes great care in finding and preparing a den that meets her needs. They start their hibernation roughly in December. The cubs are born mid-January, February, and when the bears emerge around April, they are typically very weak and sluggish. They have lost a lot of weight, especially the mother bears. This photo here was taken by a photographer who noted that the mother bear emerged with one, possibly two, cubs from her den in Yellowstone National Park on April 18th, 2025, and that she was very sluggish. So when bears emerge from their dens, they are extremely hungry and they are preoccupied with searching for food. They can't think about anything else. The mother bears and the other bears, all they want is get energy back, get food back into their bodies. And so if mother bears have very young cubs, they leave them behind in the den. If the cubs are a few months old and mobile, she may hide them behind bushes or sends them up the trees to keep them safe while she searches for food. And while it is illegal to kill a mother bear with cubs, to a hunter, the mother bear then appears as a single bear, right? And that's when they get shot. The young cubs are completely helpless and extremely vulnerable because they depend on their mother's milk. Their digestive system is adapted to their mother's milk. They have limited fat reserves. They can't forage yet on their own or not efficiently, and they cannot regulate their body temperature well yet. So they need their mother to keep them warm and safe. Without their mother, their lifeline just disappears. And so very young cubs, up to 3 months old, have no chance to survive without their mother. Older cubs that are about 4 to 12 months old likely die within 1 to 4 weeks. And the yearlings, those that are between 12 and about 12 and 24 months old, they may have a chance to survive, but they are at high risk because they have not yet learned what to eat and how to protect themselves. So this means that when a mother bear dies, her cubs die as well, primarily of starvation and dehydration. Wolves, too, face so many challenges, including an incredibly hostile political climate, especially here in the West. And they, too, get killed on behalf of ranchers when they get in so-called conflict with cows and calves left completely unsupervised on public lands. And I just want to also mention that these poor cows, they don't have any horns anymore. They're completely defenseless when they're being attacked by a predator. They have no defense mechanism. Neither are their calves, obviously. So in addition of all these challenges that wolves also face a hunting and trapping season that lasts from September through mid-March, during which trophy hunters shoot them with guns, rifles, and archery. And like I've mentioned, trappers kill wolves in steel jaw traps and neck snares, or snares put horizontally on the ground, and then they shoot them. Montana has decided to kill half of all the wolf population that lives in the state, and they have set a kill quota of 458 wolves to be killed. In addition, private landowners, aka ranchers, can kill up to 100 wolves. So last 2025-26 kill season, hunters and trappers have reportedly killed 248 wolves. They didn't quite meet the quota. 115 wolves of that total were females, with an unknown number of wolves that would have likely been mothers. We just don't know how many there were. The pups are born in early spring, and when it comes to survival chances for the pups, the situation for wolves is a little different. Because unlike bears, they are social animals who live in groups and families, so-called packs, and that social structure can sometimes buffer the loss of the mother, but only under certain conditions. The wolf pups are born blind and deaf with a good sense of taste and touch. Makes sense, right? They need to feel the mother's body. They need to find the teats. So they're blind and deaf for the first 10 to 14 days. They are entirely dependent on their mother's milk. They can't regulate their own temperature yet either, and they depend on the warmth of the mother. At that time, the mother stays at the den almost continuously, and she nurses her pups for 5 to 8 weeks. If the mother dies during that time, the pups cannot survive. So even if the father survives, he cannot nurse the pups. And if other family members cannot compensate, then pups die likely within days to weeks as well. After the weaning period is over, at about 8 weeks, wolf pups begin eating regurgitated meat brought to them by multiple adults. But even older pups depend on the family to teach and to protect them. So in general, wolf mothers are essential, not only for survival of their pups, but also for the stability of the family, which means that when a mother wolf dies, pups lose their lifeline, their world as they barely knew ends brutally. And in addition, the entire family often collapses and dissolves, which in the end leads to even more deaths of pups. So the federal state-run wildlife management system, in other words, the North American model of wildlife conservation, while it benefits hunters and trappers, it is a total moral failure. That system is grounded in human supremacy. It treats wild animals as means to an end. It views wild animals as natural, renewable resources. It values the species, the population, so that the individual animal is seen as expendable and can be killed for trophies, for the most frivolous reasons. Trophies, recreation, fun, sport, food, profit, and commerce. It is driven by the need to dominate, control, and exploit animals for frivolous human interests. And the laws, the regulations, the policies, and the hunting and trapping seasons, they just exist not to protect the animals, but to ensure that populations continue so that hunting and trapping can continue. That system, the lethal system, does not recognize the intrinsic value of the individual animals or of the mothers and children, or for any animal, nor does it have any empathy and compassion for the individual animal. It is blind to the relationships between animals, their mates, friends, and their families. And lastly, it is ignorant about the importance and the sacredness of the mother-child bond. So as some of you know, I'm a new grandmother. I'm switching gears a little bit. I don't have biological children, but my husband's son and wife just had a baby boy last October. His name is Vincent, and he's now 6 months old. When I asked Winnie the other day how she feels about being a new mother of a little baby who is entirely dependent on her, she said, "I'm his world and he is mine." And I thought this was so beautiful because it conveys that new life is being created in relationship, in togetherness, not in separation, but in union and dependency. So the bond between mother and baby is a special relationship that ensures the creation and continuation of life. And because it is so special, it is highly protected through biology and through behavior, whereby the mother will fiercely and rather selflessly protect their babies. And that is true for humans and more than human animals. So if we look at that bond from an evolutionary perspective, it becomes clear how amazing and special and sacred the mother-child bond is. So here you see a tiny creature who is believed our uber mother. You see there is a paper clip. So this this animal was reconstructed from an even tinier skull, and you can see the animal is barely as the size of the paper clip. So that is the first mammalian mother, our mother. We're all mammalians. A shrew-like animal, no bigger than the paper clip, that weighed less than an ounce. And she's about 195 million years old. She's probably the most distant ancestor of the class of mammals, which over time has created a variety of species. I think there are now over 68,000 mammalian species. And they include present-day mice, elephants, whales, wolves, bats, and humans. And if we consider that mammals emerged roughly 200 million years ago, and that humans appeared about only 300,000 years ago, then it is obvious that the mother-child bond is so much older than humanity. It did certainly not begin with humans. In fact, we have inherited that special bond from other animals. So evolution has created the mother-child bond to ensure survival. The mother-child bond is not merely just one relationship among many, but rather it is the biological and moral foundation of mammalian life, whether we talk about humans or other animals. It is basically the bond through which evolution itself flows, because without it, genes, behaviors, cultures, and entire lineages would simply stop. So much metabolic energy goes into reproduction, pregnancy, lactation, and protection, which in turn means that losing a child is a traumatic and emotional loss that causes great suffering to the survivors, and it is also an evolutionary loss. We have already talked about what happens to bear cubs and wolf pups, and of course the dairy cows and not the dairy cows, the cows exploited for dairy and their babies. So when they lose their mother, when a mother loses a child, whether it's a human or other animal mother, the loss causes tremendous suffering and grieving. We know this from our own experience, and we've all heard the stories about animals clearly grieving. So, for example, I don't know if you remember this, but there was a story in 2018 when an orca mother was observed carrying her dead newborn baby for about 17 days. Chimpanzee mothers also carry their dead baby for several days and weeks, and elephants mourn the death of dead calves. And although there often is paternal care as well, survival literally hinges on maternal care. The mother-child bond is so important that evolution has built a whole suite of biological systems around the mother-child bond to protect and reinforce it. So, for example, there is a hormonal system. Oxytocin is one of them. These hormones enhance sensitivity to offspring cues, eliciting maternal behaviors, rewarding responses, and social processing stimuli essential for complex maternal care. 2, there are neural attachment circuits in the limbic system, and that basically means that parts of the mother's brains are activated to reflect the mother's ability to distinguish the cries of their own children from other children. 3, there are behavioral patterns of proximity seeking and distress upon separation. We've heard about this many, many times today. When separated from their mother, children often exhibit signs of distress, which highlights the importance of the attachment bond for their emotional security and development. And lastly, emotional capacities that ensure persistence of care, even under hardship. So that means mothers often exhibit incredible resilience linked to their emotional intelligence while being devoted to caring for their babies in challenging situations. And that means that the mother-child bond is not to be broken. It is sacred. So Tammy has said that milk is a promise. And that is so true. Through lactation, the mother regulates the infant's development, immunity, and survival. Milk contains nutrients, immune protection, hormonal signals, and microbiome-seeding bacteria. So a mother's milk is not simply nutrition. The mother's milk is also an extension of the mother's body that bridges now two individual beings. We can think of mother's milk as a promise to take care, to trust, to learn, to be protected, and to get a good start in life. So there's so much beauty and wonder and awe in the mother-child bond. Mothers provide love, tenderness, care, play, and fierce protection. The photo on the top here is from a video someone took of a black bear mother. I hope you can see it. It shows a black bear mother with her 4 cubs in her embrace, in her lap, after she called the cubs down from a tree. When cubs are a few months old, they can climb trees, but they cannot outrun wolves or other bears yet. So the mother defends and warms them, sometimes sitting and cradling them in her forelegs while licking their heads and nursing them. Even when the mothers are feeding, they rush immediately to their cubs when they cry. And if need be, a mother will carry a cub in her mouth to a new location, or will gently grasp a crying cub in her mouth to help her or him down from a tree or across a road. So the mother is also a teacher. The babies learn how to hunt, what to eat, what not to eat, and what to avoid. They learn to recognize social signals or signals of imminent danger, for example, avoiding humans or other predators. They learn how to be a bear, how to be a wolf, how to be a mountain lion, how to be a deer, how to be a badger, how to be a raccoon, and how to be a beaver, and so forth. Yeah. And they learn intelligence and emotional regulation. And speaking of that, I just had to throw in a photo of an elephant youngster, because I've been in Africa. I love elephants. And I have seen elephant mothers reprimanding an out-of-control baby elephant who was throwing a tantrum. So in that sense, the mother-child bond becomes the template for all future social relationships, and it is the foundation for empathy, cooperation, and social complexity. I've mentioned earlier that the government-run lethal wildlife management system, or the North American model of wildlife conservation, is a total moral failure. It fails all of us. The individual wild animal, ecosystems, humans, and it fails our relationship with all other life forms and the earth as a whole. The violence must stop, and we need to transform ourselves to become a non-violent species. And that means we need to do better, and that we must replace the lethal wildlife management system with compassionate conservation, which actually is a growing international movement that seeks to do no harm. So, ahimsa. Under a compassionate conservation framework, conservation would protect not only species and ecosystems, but also the well-being of individual animals, along with the mother-child bond, which would be an ethical and ecological priority to preserve. Since its inception in 2010, compassionate conservation has gained momentum. It has sparked the interest of some non-governmental organizations. Advocates have established the Center for Compassionate Conservation at the University of Technology in Sydney, Australia. And they now have an international collaborative team spanning several continents. Compassionate conservation relies on 4 principles. First, do no harm. That principle is adopted from the Hippocratic Oath, and it means that we need to be careful when we intervene and ensure that we do good instead of harm. The second principle is individuals matter. It acknowledges the intrinsic value of individual wild animals and rejects killing them. 3, inclusivity of all wild animals, and that acknowledges the intrinsic value of both the individual and the collective they belong to, whether we label them as abundant, not native or non-native animals, or invasive. Everyone is included in this principle and deserves consideration. Peaceful coexistence calls for recognition that our interactions with wild animals should not be based in aggression and violence, but compassion, to help us to coexist with other beings in a non-violent way. So a compassionate conservation approach really aims to safeguard Earth's biological diversity while retaining a commitment to treating individuals with respect and concern for their well-being. So here we see that compassionate conservation is really concerned about the individual animal and the collective, both the population, species, and ecosystem, because we can be concerned about both. We don't need this either or. It rejects the notion of wild animals as natural renewable resources and instead treats them with, or as sentient beings with needs and interests that need to be protected. And it creates a relationship with wild animals that's motivated by pro-social emotions such as love, respect, humility, kindness, empathy, and compassion. All that good stuff that we humans have the potential to develop and foster. And compassionate conservation also asks important questions, which would not be possible in a human supremacy worldview, such as, what do wild animals actually need from us? So I'd like to conclude by reading this slide, and you're welcome to close your eyes or read along with me. Life begins not in separation, but in relationship, in union, with dependency, vulnerability, and with selfless care. The bond between wild animal mothers and their young carries a quiet, profound sacredness, an ancient thread running through all life, older than humanity itself. In forests, meadows, and mountains, this bond is expressed not in words, but in acts of devotion. A deer returning silently and quickly to her hidden fawn. A wolf guiding her pups through their first uncertain steps. A bear sheltering her cubs through the long winter. It is a relationship built on presence, protection, and sacrifice, where a mother gives warmth, nourishment, and knowledge so another life can endure. This connection is foundational, the very force that allows life to continue. It is timeless, a shared language of care that binds all beings together and reminds us that the impulse to protect and nurture is not uniquely human, but a sacred inheritance of the living world that includes everyone: humans, cows, pigs, dogs, and the wild ones. Thank you.
Wow, that was one of the most stunning presentations I've ever been able to witness. I'm sure everyone feels that with all these hearts and claps. And
oh, thank you.
Anya, thank you so deeply for agreeing to be our spokesperson in this campaign for the mama baby of the wild. So Anya is our spokesperson. If you have any questions, she will be available. Her email can be possibly shared. And
oh, absolutely. Yeah, I can put it in the chat if you want. Sorry, Tammy. Yeah,
No,
contact me anytime.
And it's something that, as we're building our website, we will have a whole section for compassionate conservation and what does it mean. And I can see your last slide being replaced with the history of Mother's Day on our homepage.
Opposite. Yeah.
It's quite stunning. Thank you. We have a few minutes. Julie's going to come in and say the closing prayer, but she's going to share a video that she did for this movement. And would anybody like to come up and comment or ask a question of Anya? Everybody might be a little spent. We've been here for 10 hours. Hi, Ray.
I know.
It's been amazing, Anya. That was an amazing presentation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Tammy.
Yeah.
There was a lot of very factual details and analytical stuff, but there's great poetry to it as well. All this deep meaning, and it helped me correct something in my mind. I think that I've always thought of animal motherhood as being something. Hey, that's like human motherhood. That's like human parenthood, and the idea that mammalian motherhood is hundreds of millions of years old, whereas human motherhood is only hundreds of thousands of years old. That's quite profound, and I don't think there's very many humans in this world that think in those terms.
Yeah, it is so true, and I think one reason why we don't think about those things is because we are so wrapped up in our human-dominated world, where we just mainly think about ourselves. I encounter that all the time. That even people who work in wildlife conservation have never really thought about those kind of things, and whether you want to call it philosophical or whatever. But there's sometimes that notion that sometimes people seem to think we've always been here, right? Because our species has always been here because it's always about us. Anyway, so how can there have been a time when we were not here?
Yeah,
So.
And it also made me want to ask my.
Go ahead.
I'm going to ask my grown children whether they learned in school. I'm in Canada, and we learned about the great fur trade with no degree of shame. It was a triumphant thing. It was an identity of our country, and I wonder if they still have to teach it. That's the way it was, but it was all about tone. Although there was overtones of, and we almost wiped out the beavers. But we managed to turn things around. So then it ended up being a story of human resilience somehow, rather than animals surviving despite us.
Right.
I hope.
Yeah, that's exactly true, and that's exactly, Ray. That's exactly the background of the North American wildlife conservation model. That it applies to Canada and North American. In fact, one Canadian of European, I think he might have been even German. What's his name? Valerius Geist, of course. He was a huge promoter of the North American model of wildlife conservation, and he was a huge hunter, total pro trapping, and no empathy. And that's what I always find in people who work and who are involved in the lethal wildlife management system. They don't even give it a second thought, that it is not all about human beings. It's always amazing to me. So.
Thank you. Alison?
Hi, Anya. Two things. I wanted to thank you for personalizing this presentation, because when you shared your personal life story, I just felt so engaged and involved in your presentation. But I know that there's always a risk in making it personal. Secondly, I wanted to ask you if you know of any vegan rewilding efforts in the state of Montana.
Yeah, thank you, Alison. And while I do not know of any vegan rewilding projects in Montana, and quite frankly, I can't even imagine that it exists, I will look into it. Also, because, Alison, I was going to contact you and Dakota anyway, because a friend of mine in the UK and we are currently writing a book on rewilding, in which we make the case for vegan rewilding. And if I could just contact you and maybe we could talk about, maybe we could feature the Climate Healers vegan rewilding project in our book. That
yes,
would be
because
amazing. So
we're also close to publishing the first ever course on vegan rewilding. It will be hosted on the Climate Healers website, but we've involved people involved in vegan rewilding, both in Europe, in India, in South America, and we're looking for other places. So that's why I was asking, because we don't have good representation for North America when it comes to vegan rewilding.
Right. I will definitely look into it, and I'll get in touch with you. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. Your presentation was amazing as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anya. This has been incredible. And, the one thing that kept running through my mind over and over again is the numbers you were giving is just in Montana. Just Montana.
Yes.
So I cannot even imagine how many wild animals are being killed every day, everywhere around the world.
That's right.
Thank you for being.
That's right. And
ask a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's right. And someone earlier today pointed out that, I can't remember who it was, pointed out that the dairy and meat industry exploit the gentle animals, right? And they kill them at an astonishing rate, But the same is true when it comes to hunting and trapping. The wild animals are being slaughtered, left and right. And you're right, the numbers were only in Montana, but if you apply them to the United States, for example, hunters kill 10,000 bears, black bears, in the United States every year. And then you think about further, what does it do to their friends, their mates, their families, their children? And it's just an absolute disaster. Absolute disaster. What does it do to the ecosystems when you take out hundreds of thousands of animals every year? What does it do to the structure, to the stability, to the resilience of ecosystems? It's a total disaster.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah. Paul would like to ask one question, and then if we could bring Anya up for one quick sec, and then we're going. Thank you for your patience, Julie, and then we're going to end with Julie's video and closing prayer. So there we go. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Anya. I don't think I've ever seen any presentations on trapping or hunting as part of this in this vegan community. So I think it's been an overlooked dimension of the problem. So when you were talking about some of the numbers of animals killed, I was thinking, 1,000 wolves, let's say. How many wolves are those as a percentage of the wolf population, and what demonic calculus does the government use to set their quotas? What goal are they? Are they trying to imagine how many wolves they need left over at the end of the season so that hunting can persist the next year? Is that their only logic? How do they arrive at these numbers?
That's a very good question, Paul. And I could get into the North American model of wildlife conservation forever, because this is really what drives this. So basically, the big picture is that hunters, and I'll be brief, Julie, because I know you're next. The hunters historic hunters, sport hunters, have created the current system of lethal wildlife management. They created the state wildlife agencies. They have put laws and regulations and policies in place that benefit them. And so it's all about, this whole system is about meeting the interests of hunters and anglers too, and trappers. It's all about exploitation. And to make matters worse, state wildlife agencies they sell these kill licenses, right? So they make a ton of money. Not through the trapping licenses. They go for cheap, which is ridiculous in and of itself. $20, you can kill up to 5 wolves. But then you add the money that let's say non-residents pay in order to kill a trophy bear or a trophy mountain lion, and then it starts becoming really lucrative for the state wildlife agencies. Then there is the other part, that animals, in my view, are being managed at a very, very minimum. I mean, the habitat ranges have so decreased for wild animals already, and yet they say that there are too many of them, too many beavers, too many whatever, right? And so there are too many of them, they say, and then they calculate how many can we kill? How many beavers? No, beavers is a bad example, because they can be killed unlimited. Trappers kill around 6,000 beavers every year, but they're using modeling to model population trends. And the bad part about that too is that the information that flows into these models mainly come from surveys, from hunters and trappers, who clearly have an interest in saying that there are so many elk out there, so many bears out there, we can kill them, we can kill 20%, so that is that. And then when it comes to wolves, though, like I mentioned, there is such a climate of hatred almost and hostility in Montana. It is unbelievable. And I really think it has to do, in part because of ranchers who raise the poor cows and calves on public lands. Actually, the public lands are the homes of the wild animals. And then they kill the poor cows and the calves, and then the wolves get shot. Right, so there's that overlap, overlap to our meat-eating addiction. Right, wild animals die also because of our meat-eating behavior. So, and then you add to that the folklore and how wolves have been presented in stories, in folklore. Werewolves, the 3 Little Pigs. Terrible, but Little Red Riding Hood. And you have an animal who is so intelligent, so beautiful, so emotionally capable, thinking, embedded in life in this world. And all these people see is there are too many of them, need to kill them. And then, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, it all goes back to our human supremacy worldview, where we think we have the right to kill every animal that may become inconvenient. No second thought about the ethical qualms about killing these animals. They're just expendable. As long as the population and the species exist, hunting and trapping can continue, and that is, in the end, what matters. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you, Anya.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for being here. And Anya will put her email in the chat because she's our spokesperson for International Catholic Cow Mother's Day. That isn't just going to be for 2026, but it will be a movement to protect mothers and babies across all species and their homes. Thank you. This has been incredible. And
thank you. Thank you.
In the early morning quiet, when the fields are breathing slow, there's a mother calling softly for the child she came to know. We took her milk, we took her baby, called it custom, called it need. But the earth remembers every bond we break to feed our greed. Bring the cows back to their mothers, bring the milk back to the young. Let no baby be taken before their life's begun. Bring them home to their mothers, let their bodies tell the truth. What was made for loving was never ours to use. She knows him by his breathing, by the sound beneath his cry, by the way the dawn is shining in his dark and liquid eyes. This is more than instinct speaking, more than nature's simple way. This is a love that crosses species, older than the word away. Bring the cows back to their mothers, let the circle still be whole. What is taken breaks the planet, what is love restores the soul. Bring them home to their mothers, let compassion be our guide. Every child beside their mother, every mother with her child. I have walked where moose give birth, where the cows lay down to calve. Placenta on the forest floor, a boundary sacred, raw and vast. I did not belong inside that circle, and she let me know it true. She ushered me back from the forest, from her home, where she belonged, not you. Bring the cows back to their mothers, honor where the birth blood lies. There are laws older than markets, written in the mother's eyes.
This last year, the krill fishery took 650,000 metric tons out of the Southern Ocean. And this is literally taking the food out of the mouths of whales and penguins, seabirds and seals. These species are being severely impacted by the greed of the krill fishery.
And out beyond the breaking waves, where the great blue mothers roam, there are calves beneath the surface, learning oceans as their home. We reach deep for a tiny body, scoop the krill from living seas. But that food was made for mothers and the young they hold and feed. Leave the krill for ocean mothers, leave the seas to feed their young. Let the whales and gentle giants raise their babies strong and sound. Bring them home to their mothers, land and ocean, hoof and fin. When we stop what's not ours to take, the healing can begin. We are waking from a long divided dream, where we fed on domination, then called violence routine. Now a wider love is moving through our hands and what we choose. Every meal a sacred promise that no mother has to lose. Beloved, stand beside me with your feet upon the ground. Let our lives be living answers, let protection make it sound. This is how the world turns gentle. This is how the old ways end. When we choose the mother-child bond again and again and again. Bring the cows back to their mothers. Let the mothers keep their.
It's a tiny bit less than 80 acres. I have Jersey cows, Holstein cows, a yak.
She estimates she's rescued about 158 cows.
And most cows don't get to live like this. It makes me happy.
Tack Ryder says she got to know cows working at a dairy farm in 1976.
The cows were just wonderful, and when they stopped making milk, they got slaughtered.
She decided to create the sanctuary after tragedy struck.
Huge storm, and I found all these dead cows in the field. The first cows I had were the 6 babies that survived the lightning storm.
She wrote a children's book about that experience, with proceeds benefiting the nonprofit, which she runs herself.
We feel entitled to artificially inseminate a cow, and when she gives birth, we steal her baby. Even though her cries of anguish are unmistakable,